welcome to Berkshire Guitar Amplifier Repairs. Another day, another amplifier, this time Marshall Valvestate S80. Like always Valvestates, they all suffer from a similar range of problems, and the customer's description of this one makes it sound to me like it's no different from many I've seen before. So basically the amp's been lying around for a few years and now the sound is intermittent and you can't really get a clean signal. So my guess is dirty pots for a start off. There may be something else inside. Power resistors tend to come a little bit unsoldered on these, but I think the very first thing to do is we'll fire it up and see what's going on, and then take the chassis out and see if just a simple pot clean will get this amp going again. So join me in a moment when I power the amp up and we'll see what's going on with it. Okay, here we are. Let's power it up. And I can hear a hum immediately, so that's promising. Let's plug a guitar in and see what happens. Very quiet. Where's the master? That's very quiet. Hear that? So just a touch on this pot here and the signal comes and goes, which tells me that's a dirty pot. So watch this. Can you hear that? For some reason it's often the treble. Oh, I was going to say, it's often the treble control which gives a lot of trouble. I don't know why that is, but it's often that one which causes a problem too. And I just touched it there and it tapped and made a noise. Hear that? That pot's so dirty, I'm struggling to find a spot on it which works. So that's the problem there. Okay, so pots. Let's just try the second channel whilst we're here. Again, look, there's a dead spot there. When I turn it, it comes and goes. Again, the treble is terrible. Don't know why it's always a treble. Really awful. Master volume. Yeah, all the pots are absolutely filthy. Let's see if the reverb's working whilst we're here. Yeah, the reverb's working. That's good. So a little trick for you, if for example we weren't able to get much sound out of this, plug the guitar into the effects return on an amplifier. That completely bypasses the preamp side and effectively plugs straight into the power amp side and allows you to diagnose whether the power amp or the preamp is the problem. We've got a bit of signal on this amp, so it's not quite the same, but I'm going to plug in there now and see, that sounds absolutely fine. So that tells us that the problem's on this preamp side. Had that been completely dead there, the problem would have probably been on the power amp side. So there's nothing else to do with this. I tell you what I will do, I want to also check whether the input jack is desoldered. So I'm going to see if I can get a signal and then just waggle, just rotating this jack around here. No, that seems quite solid, the input jack. That means we probably don't have to take the board out and resolder the input jack. Well, I'm thinking this is just pots on this amp. So let's whip the chassis out, get it up on the bench and see how easy or difficult it is to get some deoxit into these pots. They're all going to need doing. So to remove the chassis on this, quite straightforward. I've just unplugged the two connections from the reverb pan here, and although they are different lengths, I always like to label up. So I've put a bit of red tape on there for the red one and a bit of black tape on there for the black one. Helps the next person in there. And then you just pull the spade terminals off each speaker. From memory, this has got two power amplifier chips in it, a kind of a stereo amp. So one power amp chip does this speaker and the other power amp chip does this speaker. So just pull those off and now the chassis can come out simply by taking out 2, 4, 6, 8. So we'll do that now and the chassis should just slide straight out. and get yourself a suitable little pot to put the screws in. And I use this DeWitt electric screwdriver. Makes light work of it really. Take out these 8 screws. There you go, that doesn't take too long, and now the chassis will just come straight out. They come out quite easily on these amplifiers. Some amplifiers are really difficult to get the chassis out on. There we go, so I'm going to get this down on the bench and get the camera on the overhead, and we can have a little look here and see what's what. Right, now here's the chassis out. I haven't got the camera on the overhead at the moment because if I did that you would have this kind of view, and that means you can't see the pot. So let's just have a little look in here. Ideally you'd want to be squirting the deoxit up underneath here, so in other words turn this whole thing upside down and try and get the nozzle inside there. Quite difficult. However, on these pots, do you see this little, see if I can zoom in there, see this little dent in the pot here? I don't know what that's for. It might be to give this part here some structural strength, but anyway, that allows cleaner to go in there. So in other words, there's a gap in there which allows cleaner to be squirted in to the pot, so that's quite handy. So we're just going to go along those pots there with the deoxit. Now I've also, if you've seen my rant video about deoxit, you might be interested to see what I've done here. I've managed to cobble together, this is a tube from another brand of cleaner. It's a flexible tube, not that thick rigid yellow thing that deoxit put on their cans now. And I've used some heat shrink wrap onto the nozzle here, and that seems to work quite well. So I think I might have found a fix for still carrying on using deoxit. Now the thing is, I'm not sure I can do this one-handed, but basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into there, put the can onto the side so at least you can see where I'm going. I'm going to go into there like that with the can, squirt some in there. So I'm going to go along and do that to all the pots, of which there are many, and then I think I'm just going to power it up and see if that has cured a multitude of problems. The reason I check that input jack is because the input jack is, I believe, here. Just check, I'm on the right side, yeah. So the input jack is here, and they can become desoldered from the board, and to resolder that is a bit of a mission because I'd have to take that whole board out. I might just see if I can have a look in that way at the solder joints once I've cleaned these to see if I can visually confirm that they're okay. Well, whilst we're here, let's go along the amp. So look, as I was saying, there are 2 power amp chips here, 100 watts each I think, TDA 1514A, I could look it up, I bet it's a 100 watt chip, and another one here, look. So one drives each speaker. There's the valve. I'll test it and show you how I test it, but I suspect that valve will be fine. These preamp valves last a very, very long time. They don't need changing anything like as often as power valves. And then of course we've got the usual slew of dual op amps here. Each of these has 2 stages of amplification. This is doing all the preamp side and tone control side and the reverb driver and all that kind of thing. And there's the main bridge rectifier there. Rectifies the AC to the DC. Here the smoothing capacitor. Ooh, I don't like these, look. If they could become unsoldered, it's a bit of a nightmare, so I'm going to also stiffen up those so that they don't do that. They don't feel unsoldered to me at the moment, but I don't like those wobbling around at all. These are almost certainly plus and minus voltage regulators. Plus 15, minus 15 would be my guess. And that's it really, nothing else to see on this amplifier. No output transformer, of course, it's not a valve amp. This will be a little HT supply for this valve, would be my guess. So another little bridge rectifier and a smoothing capacitor, and that's going to be producing, I don't know, 150, 200 volts to drive the preamp valve. Okay, let's get some pot cleaner in these pots and see if that cures most of our problems. Right, we're set up for test here. I've got the house speaker crock clipped onto one of the amplifier outputs, and I've made sure that these other amplifier outputs are separated here so they don't short together or short to earth. I've got a guitar plugged in, plug some mains in, turn these volumes down a bit. I sprayed WD-40 into all of these controls and worked them backwards and forwards a fair bit. Let's see what, if anything, that's done. So we're on the clean channel. Already sounds a lot better. So on the clean channel now. To give this switch a bit of a squirt. Haven't done the switches yet. That's better already. Okay, so on the clean channel. Master volume was down a bit. Okay, that's fine, look, and the pots have no dead spots. That's a bit iffy, that one. Treble again, yeah, treble again. So and so of a pot to treble every single time. That's better now. Worked it backwards and forwards a bit. Not quite sure what all that humming is. So now let's try the boost channel. A lot of nasty hum on that. Pot's still a bit scratchy on that, look. I'll just turn the master down and then just work the pot backwards and forwards a few times. Still a little bit scratchy, that one. I'll just see if I can get a bit more cleaner in there. Yep, that did the trick. Middle treble, that's okay. Contour and volume, so that's all okay. And the heavy overdrive. Insane overdrive, that's okay. And effects we don't want. The hum was the reverb. So if you have a listen, look, the reverb of course is disconnected, it's hanging out over here, so turn the reverb up. Can you hear that hum? Turn it down. And that goes. Okay, so basically the amp's good, it was just dirty pots. I'm going to quickly try this other output because I haven't actually confirmed that that output is okay, so we ought to do that, so let's turn off to do that. And then swap the crock clips over here. Make sure these are not going to touch each other and those aren't going to touch each other. Turn back on. Yeah, so the second channel's working as well, so that's good. Everything's okay. Right, now I'm just going to do two things now, well, actually three things. I want to eyeball the connections on here if I'm able to, although it seems alright. Waggling it around, that's fine, I'll have a quick look. I want to take the valve out and test it, and I think you might be interested in how I do that. I'll show you how to do that. And I'm just going to stabilise, well I'll tell you what, I'm going to see if waggling these. No, so that they're not dry joint those yet. I'm going to put a little strap across there to give them a bit more stability. So let me show you how I do that. I think we'll do that first of all. In the workshop I keep a box where I throw in useful materials, and so I've got things like this plastic from a shirt, and it's very nice plastic this, so I'm looking for something reasonably stiff. So this will do, I think. It looks like I've been here before, so I'm just going to chop off a piece. Now I want to just well, it must be about that long, not quite as wide, so we'll just trim this down like that. This is being a bit pedantic, but anyway. There we go. And the object is just to, actually it's still a bit too long, I'll just chop that down a bit. Is that right? Yeah, that's fine. There we go. I'm just going to glue that on there, and that will stiffen up this arrangement here. Not good design. Normally one would put some hot melt glue. I might even do that. So there we go. I'm just going to leave that to dry, and I'll give that a bit more stability. Meanwhile, let's just pull the valve out. I'm just going to take the mains out, even though the amp's switched off. I'm going to take the mains out. I'll just pull this valve and see what it is. Well, it's unbranded, cheap Chinese ECC83. I bet it's okay though. I've got my valve tester here actually, right next to me. I was just testing some valves earlier. So we may as well, whilst we're waiting for the glue to dry, it's set up on ECC83. I don't use this for testing power valves, although it will test power valves. I've got my homemade power valve tester. This is perfectly good enough for preamp valves. So we'll just plug that in there, press that 3 times. It was already set to ECC83. Now it goes through this sequence of testing, and these LEDs drop down 1 each time until eventually it gets down to the bottom here, in which case it will give us the result. So you see it's now testing all the way. And if you remember, there are 2 valves in every preamp valve, so it's 2 packages in one. See, it's gone down to there already. Now it's down to here, 13. So this tests both halves of the tube, and then in the end it will give us a gain match. So 2 numbers will come up finally, like say 9 and 11, which will show us that the 2 halves are slightly mismatched on this. 9 and 10 would be closer, or 8 and 9, or 7 and 8, or 12 and 13 would be a closer match in gain for the 2 halves. And if there's a single number like 10 or 9 or 8 or whatever, that means both halves are equally matched. And so it's gone down to 3 already. 2 is going to come up with a result any minute now. And there. So it's come up good, look. So the valve's fine. And they're fairly closely matched, the 2 halves, the 9 and the 10, so that's perfectly okay to go back in. We don't need to do anything on that, don't need to put a new valve in. I don't spend customers' money if I don't have to. There's no point in putting new valves in if the old valves are perfectly okay. It also saves environmentally and all that good stuff. So there we go, no need to put a new valve in there. Bring this back now. That's gone off already, and that's already much stiffer, look. I think I'm also just going to put a little bit of hot melt glue around the base here of that one, and if I can get in around the base of that one there. That's preventing a problem that will happen in the future. As these waggle around, they become desoldered from the underside of the board. And it's okay, you just need to resolder them, but you can see what's involved in resoldering the bottom of this board. All of these controls have to come off, all the nuts have to come off. You have to somehow joggle this board out here. You know, I have done it in the past, but it's a half hour to strip down, half an hour to put back together, and another 30 or 40 pounds for the customer. So if we don't have to do it, we won't. And anyway, that will prevent that happening in the future. And that's solid as a rock now. Look, it does not even wobble at all now. So we fixed a problem there. Valve's good, that's good. I haven't yet checked this jack socket. I'll do that quickly now, and then I'll report back to you. And if that's okay, we're good to go back in the chassis, in the case, put the chassis back in. And I've also cleaned, by the way, all the jacks. And to do that, you plug a jack plug in. That's what that's doing here. You plug a jack plug in, that opens the contacts, and then you can spray some cleaner in and then pull the jack plug out again. Done all that. Good. Let's have a quick look down here, then I'll get back to you. Right, let's have a go at putting the chassis back in. Should be fairly straightforward. So just offer it up to the case. Slide it in like that. And make sure that the front panel controls are looking kind of roughly where they should be. Now notice a fair bit of play on this. Look, the chassis can go up and down, so we're going to need to locate that. It's always easier once you've got the first screw in, and I've got a little trick to help you with that. Let me show you. Right, I use a thin screwdriver like this. This happens to be a posi drive, but it doesn't matter. And I'm going to lift up the chassis, and it doesn't really matter which screw. I'm just going to go through here and locate the hole for it. There you go, that's gone in nicely there, look. And that sort of holds the chassis in approximately the right position. Now I can get one of the proper screws, and hopefully, with a bit of luck, a bit hard to do this with the camera on, so I'm working from behind, joggle the chassis around until the first screw lines up with the retainer on the chassis, and that gets one screw in. Once you've got one screw in, your life is a lot easier. Surprisingly difficult to do this live on camera from behind like this. There we go. So now that's the bottom one in. And we now no longer need this retainer, and we can just go along and put the remaining screws in. I won't do all of them, of course, a little bit boring. They're just going like a dream now, no problems whatsoever. Good, so that's that in, and then we'll plug the reverb back in, and we'll plug the speakers back in, and then we'll give it a bit of a clean up because it's quite dirty at the moment, the amp. These are just going in like a charm. I won't bother to do the other three live. I'll put those in for you. I'll see you back in a minute. Since this is a short video, I thought I may as well just show you how I clean this up as well. I don't know how much you can see how dirty this is. There are these white marks which I'm not going to get terribly involved in, but the whole chassis is ingrained with dirt. I use this Meguiar's convertible top cleaner. It's the best cleaner I've found for this. I've been asked by somebody you know, it sounds like I'm advertising it. Do I get sponsorship? No, I don't get any sponsorship from anybody whatsoever in any way, shape or form of this channel. I get literally 0 pence. Just someone recommended this and it's great stuff. It gives you quite a lot of freedom not having to make money out of your YouTube channel. It's not like it used to be. It's extremely difficult to make money out of a YouTube channel. You need, well, I won't say millions of views, but you need hundreds of thousands of views per video to make 1,500 quid a month. Sorry, I noticed this is a bit loose, this screw. There we go. YouTube have effectively taken all the profit out of it, of course. Why wouldn't they? So if you're one of these people who gets 1 million views or something, yeah, you can take advertising and maybe make some money from it. I hate advertising on YouTube, it drives me absolutely crazy. So I'm not planning to sell out to the man and have advertising on the channel. Not that the channel is currently big enough for it anyway. I'm in a fortunate position of not needing the money either. I don't do this for my main profession and I'm retired now. So I'm not desperate for money, don't need to make every conceivable penny out of everything, and that's a very nice position to be in because you don't have to take sponsorship, you don't have to take advertising, you don't have to be promoting your channel and trying to get likes and views and all that kind of absolute rubbish that will dominate and take over your life if that's the route you want to go on. Anyway, I hope that was interesting while I was cleaning this, and you can see how absolutely filthy this tissue is, look. Absolutely filthy. And that's just come straight out of that Tolex. That looks a lot better now. I wonder what this white stuff is. It doesn't seem to want to come off, it looks like paint. I don't think I'll get involved in white spirit and all that kind of stuff there. Now, the next thing is the front panel. It's actually not too bad, surprisingly. We have a missing knob. I think I've got one in the... I've got one lurking around in my stash somewhere. But just for the sake of completeness, I'll show you how I cleaned this. And to clean that, I use an anti-static foam cleaner. They're all pretty much the same. This is Maplin, but Maplin have gone out of business. That's my last can of that. I like this one very much, Amber Sil, Amber Cleanse. Again, no sponsorship. That's just what I use. And the other good thing about that is if I tell you that I use something, you know, you're not thinking, oh, I bet he's getting some money from it, because I'm not. Now this is kind of scares you rigid when you spray this on. It looks like concentrated nitric acid, look. Dissolving the front panel. Ugh. But it's just a foaming cleaner. And this gets a little bit awkward, of course, because of all these controls. So I usually go up and down the top and bottom like that. It's amazingly dirty. Absolutely really dirty, that. And it's getting in between the controls is a little bit tricky. I'll just make a kind of V out of the tissue paper and try and get in there as best I can. If you have to take the chassis out and the board out, of course, all these come off, and that's the perfect time to clean up the front panel before you put it all back together. But we've got lucky on this one. We didn't have to take the circuit board out, which is a right mission. So there you go. That looks absolutely brand spanking new. Another little tip is clean up this little sloping face here. That gets neglected. And then the final thing is to clean this bottom. This is the bottom of the chassis of the case, of course, and that is where all the dust and dirt accumulates. So just go along there and clean that up a bit too. We're not trying to get this perfect. I spend a lot of time just cleaning amps, but I do like to send them back to the customer looking kind of halfway decent. Now, apart from a new knob, which I'll go and have a little rootle around for, we're ready to turn this amp on and see if it works. So I have just remembered that I've forgotten to plug the speakers and the reverb in, so I'll do that as well. Okay, reverb plugged back in, look the correct way round, red and black. Speakers, observe polarity here, red on one side, black on the other for 1 amp. Red on one side, black on the other, in other words the same. With one speaker it doesn't matter which way round you put the terminals, it's just going in and out, so you'll either go in and out or out and in, and there's no difference. However, with 2 speakers like this, if you reverse these they'll be driving out of phase, so one will be going in at the same time the other one's coming out. The amp will still work, it'll just sound a bit funny, it'll sound thin, and that's because the addition and subtraction of the sound waves are cancelling each other out. So make sure you get those the right way round, and we're good to go. There you go, I had a knob in the knob box. Doesn't quite match, it's a little bit more goldy than these, but that's fine, and better than an empty shaft. So now we're going to turn the amp on and do a final test, and then this is a wrap. Okay, here we go, you're seeing this as I'm seeing it. I haven't pre-tested it. Turn it on, select the clean channel, put these all at sensible levels, reverb down to nothing at the moment, plug in. It's interesting, got a nice chorus effect there, I hadn't noticed before. Oh yeah. If you can call that nice. Anyway, we'll turn that down. Test the reverb. Bit noisy, a bit hummy, but it's there. And so that's the clean channel. All the controls are non-scratchy. We'll go to crunch on the clean channel, and that's just a bit more gain. That's good. Now we go to the lead channel 1 and turn up the volume. There we go. So it's overdrive 1 and overdrive 2. Well, that was overdrive 2, this is overdrive 1. Overdrive 2, insane gain levels. We checked the reverb, we checked the chorus. Master volume is good. That amplifier is now working and ready to go back to the client. Unfortunately, there is one more thing to do on this amplifier. The customer supplied a mains lead for it, just a standard IEC mains lead, and I've been using my shop lead to plug in to test the amp. I can't just send this back to the client like this without having a look to make sure it's safe. For example, if this was dangerous and they plugged it in and got an electric shock or a fire or something, I think in all honesty I should have checked it out. So all I very quickly do is just run my fingers along to make sure there are no nicks and cuts or anything like that. And now I must unfortunately have a look inside here. I want to make sure the fuse rating is correct. Often people have got a 13 amp fuse in here. I haven't opened this up yet, and I also want to make sure that the screw terminals are all there, in particular that the earth is there. So let's just have a quick look. And by the way, whilst I'm at it, obviously this is for my UK viewers, plugs these days must have this insulating section on the live and neutral. If this were one of the old-fashioned ones with the brass pin going all the way down, I would have to change this plug. So let's have a look inside. It's an old one, I can see it's kind of somewhat old-fashioned one. It's got a 5 amp fuse in, that's okay. We could put a 3 amp in, but 5 amp is fine. And the earth wires there, so it looks quite good to me. I'm just going to make sure these are tight. Often I find the earth lead is completely loose. No, these are tight, and I'm happy with that. That's perfectly alright. So we can pass that as good to go. I've seen some horror stories in here, as I'm sure you can imagine. Earth wire just kind of hanging off because this has been pulled and the earth wire has been pulled off. 13 amp kettle fuse in there. This is 2 turns loose, you know, the live wire is just barely touching. So I always have a look inside to make sure that that's okay. So there we are, we're done. I hope you enjoyed that one. It's what I would call a straightforward maintenance video, but I think they're quite useful just to see the little tips and tricks that an amp tech gets up to. Great little amps these actually, I don't knock them. For the money, you can buy one of these for very low money. They're a pretty powerful amp and quite versatile with the reverb and the chorus effects and the crunch and the lead and the overdrive, but they do suffer from simple little problems, dry joints, dirty pots, loose power resistors, that sort of thing. So from time to time they do need a little bit of TLC. Well, we managed it with this amp, and the bill for the customer will be very modest, and I'm sure he'll be delighted to get this amp back into service. So thanks as ever for watching, and I'll catch you on my next video.